You used to get to that monument by splashing through Rock Creek in your carriage and then up a road that led over to the site of these monuments. Of course, automobiles came along, and for a while people were splashing through the creek in their automobiles, but a bridge was never placed at that location. Hello, I'm Tim Smith. Welcome to another Monuments Monday. And it is really hot out today. And so we thought we'd do another question and answer. Now, let me mention that, there's a comment section on the YouTube page. And of course, we have our Facebook channel also. So you can actually ask questions, and we do look at all the questions in the videos, and eventually, if it's a question just in the general nature, we'll put it in one of these Q&A videos. Right. So Alanna?
First question, Tim. Lane Meyer 9350 asks, do you think Longstreet's monument is as underwhelming as I do?
Well, General Longstreet's monument was dedicated, I believe, off the top of my head, in 1997. Of course, I was at the dedication ceremony, and I actually do know the sculptor. Now, I would suggest that one of the things that happened there, and I was, here at Gettysburg along the process of that monument, and the original design of it was much more expansive, like he was going to be standing on a pedestal. But as time went by and it got closer to the time they wanted to dedicate it, I think the amount of money they raised was a little bit less than they anticipated, so they decided to forego the large pedestal that was originally going to be placed on. At least that's my memory of events. And so it's kind of sitting on the ground. And some people pointed out that maybe the backside of Longstreet's horse is a smaller scale than the front side of the horse. So I understand when people are critical of that monument. I mean, looking around the battlefield, there are monuments I like, and there are definitely monuments I don't like. So I think we all have our favorites and our monuments that are not our favorites.
Levi the Nerd asks, should there be more monuments to the U.S. regulars on the battlefield?
Well, the United States Regular Army participated in the battle, and there is a large U.S. Regular Memorial on Cemetery Ridge near the high water mark that was dedicated in, I believe, 1909. And I think William Howard Taft maybe spoke at the dedication. And that monument is really large, and it lists all the United States regular units that were in the battle. So the U.S. regulars were the standing army, and they were a very small part of the volunteer army at Gettysburg. I guess the big issue with that is that each of the regiments, they're from a town or a county or a group of towns, and they're all from the same place, and they had regimental associations after the Civil War of veterans who lived near each other. And so these regimental associations are the ones that received the money for monuments and helped fund the monuments that were placed on the battlefield. But the U.S. Regular Army really didn't have any such thing. These units, although sometimes they were organized at a certain place, they were made up of men who lived all over the country, and there was no organization after the war like in the volunteers. And the other thing about the U.S. regulars, of course, is the federal government paid for the U.S. regular monument, and the federal government did place first tablets and then stones with markers on them for the various U.S. regular monuments or units around the battlefield. So they are represented, but perhaps their monuments are a little underwhelming.
Porter Alexander 8936 asks, does the monument to Battery M, 1st New York Light Artillery, mark the spot where they shelled the Taney House?
Wow. So we're talking about Weininger's Battery, which I believe is from Lockport, New York, and they have a monument on Powers Hill, and they have, but I should say this, that they also had a section that was across the Baltimore Pike on what we commonly refer to as McAllister's Hill. And it's possible, and that was right above McAllister's Mill, so it's possible that that section is the one that's showing the Charles Zephaniah Tawney House on the third day of the battle. I'm not sure which artillery shells hit that. Could have been one of the other batteries up there too, but that's really a good question, very insightful.
Robin Burke asks, if you could wave your magic wand and have a monument created that expressed the way you feel about the history of Adams County, your place in it, and your passion about the Gettysburg battle, what would that monument be and where would it be located?
Well, I think I'd put a monument in the center of the square of Gettysburg. We have this big open space in the center of the square where we put our Christmas tree, and I want to put a monument there honoring maybe famous people from Adams County over the years. I don't know exactly who I'd put on it, whether I'd put on it Dwight David Eisenhower, who lived here, or Eddie Plank, the famous baseball player from here, or Mary Jamison, who was kidnapped here during the French and Indian War, or one of the local nurses like Sally Myers. But that would be a really cool place to put a monument honoring Gettysburg individuals. I know we're talking about putting up a monument soon here in the next few years that honors people that have had an impact on Gettysburg's history over the years. And we have a different place in mind for that monument.
Glenna Linville asks, what can you tell me about the 35th PA monument on top of Big Round Top?
We're talking about the 35th. Let me back up a little bit. That would be we're talking about the 5th Pennsylvania Reserves, maybe. The 35th? Mm-hmm. 35th. What's minus 35, minus 29? Because on top of Big Round Top are the 12th Pennsylvania Reserve Monument and the 5th Pennsylvania Reserve Monument on Big Round Top. And of course, you know how the Pennsylvania Reserves were regiments that were originally organized by the state of Pennsylvania, but then the federal government did not want to accept them into federal service, so they were set aside and they were given numbers such as the 1st Pennsylvania Reserves, the 2nd Pennsylvania Reserves, the 3rd Pennsylvania Reserves. So the 30th Pennsylvania Infantry is actually the 1st Pennsylvania Reserves. And I think how we just add 29 to a number and it becomes the Pennsylvania number of the line. It's really confusing when you have cavalry units. Like you might have the 21st Pennsylvania Cavalry, but they're actually, I don't even remember, the 183rd Pennsylvania of the line. So I wouldn't get too involved in the numbers. But the Pennsylvania Reserve units on Big Round Top actually marched to the top of Big Round Top on the evening of July 2nd after the fighting on Little Round Top and occupied that hill, along with the 20th Maine and the 83rd Pennsylvania eventually. And then on the third day of the battle, more units arrived on the top of the hill. And they actually, from the top of their position, there are letters and diaries where they can actually look out and see some of Pickett's charge or see Farnsworth's charge at the bottom of the hill. But, I've been up there a lot on Big Round Top, and I really, really like the position of those reserve regiments on top of that hill. I think if I was going to be somewhere on the Battle of Gettysburg, I'd like to be on top of Big Round Top. Pretty safe up there, too.
Joe Landwehr asks, Tim, are you aware of any additional monuments awaiting approval from either the town or on the battlefield?
Whoa, I'm sure I am. Let me think. That's a good question. There's always people that have an idea for a monument and they're trying to raise money for that particular monument. So I don't know one on the park that is being promoted at the moment, but there are other monuments outside of Gettysburg that are being considered. Civil War Trails is still very active in putting up wayside exhibits at different historic locations, and they just put up a wayside exhibit near at the site of the Battle of Fairfield along tract or the tract Ortana Road, so near Ortana, Pennsylvania, that you can see near the Warner's Orchard, for instance. But as far as monuments, one of the things is you have to get park approval and congressional approval to put an actual monument on the battlefield. And I know of a few examples in recent years where people have tried to put up a monument, didn't make the qualifications. There's a monument, I think, the 18th Mississippi of Barksdale's Brigade, but it's in the parking lot of the Military Museum on the Baltimore Pike because they couldn't get approval to put it someplace else. There was that statue of Lincoln recently. It's in front of our public library, and I think there were 5 different locations that were suggested for that monument over the years. A couple of them on Cemetery Hill, but it's difficult to get approval to put up a monument, a lot of times because of the expense associated with the upkeep of the monument incurred by the person who allows it to be put up. On the actual battlefield, of course, in 2002, I think it was, we had monuments placed to, 1996, the Maryland Monument in the Sycamore parking lot. I think 2002, the Delaware Monument in the parking lot, and the 11th Mississippi on Seminary Ridge. And I tell you, it was hard for the Maryland delegation. They really wanted it somewhere on the battlefield, maybe on Culp's Hill where Marylanders fought against Marylanders. But in the end, the park would only allow them to put it up in the parking lot of the old Sycamore building, which of course has been moved, but the Maryland Monument, Delaware Monument are still there.
All right, Tim, last question. Why haven't we done a video on Neill Avenue?
Well, Neill Avenue, or generally referred to as Wolf's Hill, is a tract of land that was purchased by the park early on, and monuments were placed on it of Thomas Neill's brigade that was involved in skirmishing on the 3rd day of the battle. So this is east of Rock Creek and Culp's Hill. But you used to get to that monument by splashing through Rock Creek in your carriage and then up a road that led over to the site of these monuments. Of course, automobiles came along, and for a while people were splashing through the creek in their automobiles, but a bridge was never placed at that location. For whatever reason, the park did not place one of their bridges there like they did at other areas around the battlefield. And eventually, people stopped splashing across the creek. They stopped using the road. The road was abandoned by Mountjoy Township eventually. And today, there is no public access to Neill Avenue. So again, if you like the content we put on our YouTube channel, please like and subscribe to the video. And you're welcome to put comments or other questions in the link to this video.